Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have to say, you have no idea how deep the back pocket of Ruben is. If you reach down, he just basically run the whole Sunday service. And I don't think it's bottomed out yet. Thank you, Ruben, for leading us until this point, and then you'll also be closing us out later. So, yeah, that's a great service. Thank you. This is the sermon time, I suppose. So
Do you want me to turn it off? I can.
we don't need that. It's up to you. But later on, you have to turn it on again. Okay. Just a quick recap, a very quick recap of what Jamie said last week, which was amazing because she pretty much walked through the entire Bible in 30 minutes. Did anybody catch that last week, or you watched on the video? That was amazing. She did that wanting to tell us through the entire story of the Bible how passionate God is about his children, about us, that he's pursuing us. And she said basically the rest of the Bible, since like the first 2 chapters, is God pursuing us, if you remember that. And that is also in line with our theme for, as I'm sure you know this already, that we are having discussion about what is mutual love, what is faith that is based on relational faith. So today, I will only build on the foundation that Jamie already built, and hopefully that is a little helpful for us to go forward. I have to say though that the first song that we had, Anchor for the Soul, really got me, and I hope you don't mind that I'm going to start with telling a very personal thing that is also not a very uplifting thing, so I hope you don't mind. Is that we recently lost a very dear friend who has been a very big blessing in our family, and I only pray that she felt that way about us. She had a very challenging life, it's not easy. And there were hopes and dreams that were unfulfilled, and there were hurts, and there were a lot of struggles that were unresolved. And I remember a few Sundays ago, we were singing a song that Ruben was leading. It was a song that is a prayer and petition song. I remember that as I was singing, the more I sang, the more I got angry. I realized I was thinking about my friend. I was thinking about her life and all this injustice, all this nonsense that she experienced. And she put a good fight. God knows what kind of late night prayers or all this crying out that she had. God knows, I don't know. And now that she's gone, so much of that, there's no recourse. There's no peace. And I remember I was singing that song and I said, I refuse to have peace whenever I think about her. And I can only pray to God for God's mercy that in the world to come, that there will be only goodness, there will be only joy, there will be only love. And when she gets to see it, when she gets to taste it, that she can finally find rest. And that song really got me when we sing Anchor of the Soul. The reason I am telling you this very personal thing is because I believe that I'm not the only one who have experienced this, even recently. I'm not the only one who feel this way in our lives. And the fact is that no one in this world who ever loved, who ever cared, not even the self-proclaimed atheist, would admit that there is zero regret when people we love, people we care, cross over to the other side of the abyss that separates the living and the dead. And therefore, throughout all cultures and throughout all times, people believe in afterlife. Even before the first letter of the Bible was written, thousands of years before that, there were already Egypt and Mesopotamia, and they were highly advanced for at least 1,000, if not 2,000 years before the Bible was written. So even those people believe some kind of afterlife stuff. My culture, my Chinese culture, which has nothing to do with the Bible, have our version. And I'm sure that's the same for your ancestral culture before Christianity. Therefore, just because we believe in some sort of heaven, afterlife, does not set us apart from every other belief system that ever was, that is, that will be. But what it means is that we are all human. And it's only human to believe that there is a place where our loved one would go, a place that somehow our love, our thoughts can still reach across. So if believing in some sort of afterlife does not set Christianity apart, if it doesn't set us apart as the people of the book, then what sets us apart? And this is actually kind of counterintuitive, because the Bible is unique in that it actually doesn't care that much about going to heaven. If you cut everything in the Bible down to only passages that remotely suggesting something about a passage to heaven, we will cut it down to no more than a pamphlet. But you know how big the book is, right? So the rest of it, what is it about? The Bible actually cares a lot about this life, this world. God of the Bible cares deeply about our well-being in this world, in this life, and likewise the well-being of this world because of how we behave in this world. So why is this important? Well, number one, this is foundational to understanding the Bible. I think that's on your to-do list. And number two, going back to the theme of mutual love, about relational faith, we have to first understand that love is not something out there, way out there, out of reach. It's not something that is distant and abstract, hidden in heaven, and only privileged for a few ones who are initiated. Love is not like that, but love is in the here and now. Love is beautiful, but love is also scary. I cannot list the definition of love to you in nice bullet points and clean presentation. It is impossible, because love lives in our memories, in our songs. It is our story, and it's an ongoing story. And here's the kicker. It is written not just by ourselves. It has to be written by others. Therefore, love is full of uncertainties. It is hopeful, but it is messy at best. So talking about messy, sometimes we thought we know somebody until we see their raw and unfiltered emotions. And then you say, oh, wait a second. We have to rethink a little bit here. And there are a number of times in the Bible that God displays his raw emotions. Last week, Jamie showed us a passage in Jeremiah when God was saying, like, what did I do wrong to you that you abandoned me and go after other God? Those very raw emotions that God displayed every now and then in the Bible. And it seems to have to do with exile every single time. And exile doesn't just happen one time like we thought in the history of Israel. It first began with exile from the garden, and then there were many more exiles. One of them is what we're going to talk today. And it happened early in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, in chapter 6. The whole humanity, well, actually, one family out of the whole humanity is exiled from all of the land, because the whole land is no good anymore. That's the story of Noah. So, you know the story. In chapter 6, God saw how great the human wickedness on earth, how every plan devised by human mind was nothing but evil all the time. And the Lord regretted having made humankind on earth. And with a sorrowful heart, God, the Lord said, I will blot out from the earth humankind, whom I created, humans together with the beasts, creeping things, and birds of the sky, for I regret that I have made them. So last week, Jamie said, God created a world that is good. But also, one of the most faithful decisions that God made was to create a bunch of people with free will and release them into the world and say, now you go run it. And instead of treating that as our royal responsibility, we treated that like all you can eat buffet for 40 a night, and we just abuse it. And the whole world, the whole buffet table was corrupted because of us. And God saw, God said, I regret having made humankind, and therefore the flood. But I'm not here to talk about the flood. You know the story. I'm actually here to talk about what happened after the flood. So what happened after the flood? It's like that song by Leonard Cohen, again, that was released after he died, which says, I had no trouble betting on the flood against the ark. You see, I knew about the ending, what happens to the heart. So what happens to the heart after the flood? You know, after all the big thunder and the deluge and all the destructions came this silent whisper of God to himself that says, never again will I doom the earth because of humankind. Even though the devising, the scheming of the human mind are evil from youth. God regretted again. The flood did not work. Starting the creation all over again did not work. Why? Like the song says, I knew about the ending, what happens to the heart. When it comes to the heart, power, coercion might make people fear, but it's not going to make people's heart change voluntarily. The display of might never wins over the hearts. So what is God going to do to proceed if he still wants to have our hearts? He wants to win our hearts, he wants our hearts to change, and that he wants to have a healthy and mutual relationship with us. How did God proceed from this point? Well, it turned out God made a covenant with Noah and his children. By the way, who are the children of Noah? Yes, textbook answer, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. But who are the sons of Ham, Shem, and Japheth? All of us here. I'm talking to the children of Noah, right here. Everybody out there too. I'm talking to the children of Noah. So this is for you. This covenant is for you, is for me. And we at church sometimes we are very obsessed with the covenant of Mount Sinai, and we talk about that all the time, sometimes not in a very positive light. And we forget that there was an older covenant that is for us, that is relevant for us, for all the children of Noah. And that's our inheritance. Show of hands if you're a children of Noah. All of you here. So God gave Noah commandments after the flood. This is how God is going to proceed if he wants to rebuild this relationship. And that commandment says, whoever sheds human blood, by human hands shall that one's blood be shed. For in the image of God was humankind made. Number one question, what is the meaning of this covenant? Well, on the surface, it is about justice. It is about human lives that are non-negotiable. That's the literal meaning of the covenant. But if we look just a little deeper under the surface and we listen attentively, we can hear God says that I still choose to trust my children. How does a commandment like this have to do with trust after the flood? You see, this whole thing about blood, not shedding blood, calls back to the story of Cain and Abel. You know the story in chapter 4 of Genesis, right? God said, where's your brother? And Cain said, I don't know. I'm not my brother's keeper. Like, of course you are. Oh my goodness, right? And God said, what have you done? Listen, the blood of your brother cries out to me from the ground. That's number one. And then look forward just a little bit into the book of Numbers. There's a commandment to the Israelites that says, you shall not pollute the land in which you live, for innocent blood pollutes the land. And the land can have no expiation for blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. This is in Numbers chapter 35. So what is all this? Well, first of all, This echoes the commandment that was given to the children of Noah. You hear that? But what is all this connection between the blood and the land? Why does God keep repeating this? Why did God say to Adam, cursed be the ground because of you? Why did God say to Cain, when you work the ground will no longer yield its crops to you? Why did God say to Noah, I will destroy the flesh with the earth? And finally, after the flood, again, God has to say something about the earth. Even though humans continue to be evil, but never again will I doom the earth because of humankind. What's all this connection between our moral responsibility and the fate of the land, of the earth? What has it got to do with us? Well, it is because ever since God put the first humankind in the garden to serve it and to guard it, since then, the well-being of God's creation doesn't just depend on God, it depends on us. And this is where the scripture starts to deviate from some theologies that we might be familiar with that says our number one concern is to go to heaven. Our number one concern is about our individual faith, our personal salvation. Because the scripture wants to insist right from the get-go that our number one concern is that we are royal workers on earth and that our deeds would have a moral impact that ripples across the entire cosmos. That's so after the flood, even though the flood is perhaps the biggest indictment against our failure in this regard, as soon as the flood was over, God made a covenant and gave a commandment. In other words, God immediately returned the responsibility, the moral responsibility back to us. If that's not trust, I don't know what it is. And that's crazy because there's no evidence that we are trustworthy at that point, right? But I think here, all of you can memorize the Hebrews book definition of faith better than I do. Faith is what? Confidence in confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. Thank you. We usually talk about our faith to God, that is to believe in something we don't see. Well, it works the other way too. When God said, I never again will doom the earth, He is actually saying that one day, my children will prevail over their worst instincts and to become my true image bearers, to reflect my glory back to the creation. And God, He said, never again will I doom the earth, because He is willing to bet the entire creation on us. That is how much faith God has in you and I. Before we have faith in God, God has faith in us. That's the end of the story. But why do I tell you these stories? Just to illustrate that to have faith in one another and to have trust in one another is the foundation of every healthy relationship. And just like the story shows us, to trust is to first give up the need for control. If God, after the flood, still asserts His power the way He did, we don't stand a chance. Instead, what did God do? God chose to place a limit on Himself, and He still honors the commitment until today, which is why we're still here, which is why people are having fun there. The Creator chose to stay loyal to His creation. Our Father chose to trust us, His children. And here I'm going to read a quote to you. Sorry, I'm being sloppy here because I forgot where I got it from. I'm going to read it for you anyway. It says, love puts us into a relationship that is something beyond us. And so therefore something that we can never fully manipulate. Something that is without our power. Love is something that we can never be fully certain of. And there's always a risk that as we love, the love will not be returned. There's a risk that one day we may lose that love. What we say when we say, I love you, is we are saying, here I am for you. I'm here and I'm willing to make room for what it is that you bring into this relationship. When we love, we're not loving something or another. We're not giving something to another. Instead, we're creating a space within our life to let the other person give themselves as who they really are. And this is what God did for us right after the flood. When God said, never again will I do the earth, even though humankind are evil, God is taking a risk that the love will never be returned, and God was willing to take that risk. That is trust. So how ironic then, if we read just a few more chapters into it, we saw that just as God placed a limit on himself, on his power, the first thing that humankind did was to build a tower, to build a superpower with centralized control. And they said, come, let us build a city, a tower that reaches to the heaven, to make a name for ourselves so that we don't get scattered over the face of the earth. And before you dismiss this as just some kind of legend or some myth, well, number one, it says the story took place in Shinar. Where is Shinar? Well, in a few chapters before, if you pay attention, it's Babylon. Number two, it says the people made bricks. Who made bricks? In Egypt, people cut stones. In Mesopotamia, people make bricks. And number three, the word Babel, in Hebrew, Bavel, Babylon, Bavel, is the same word. So this is Babylon. Babel is Babylon. It's the superpower of the day, where they have power, they exert power. And they force people to speak in one lip. That's what we read in the story, right? So they monopolize the control and the definition of truth. They built a tower with advanced technology, and it says that we're going to control the access to heaven, or so they thought. What this story shows us is that the need for control always creates empires, and the empires speak only the language of power, not love. And how easy, how tempting it is for any human group, big or small, to choose control over trust. But it's not to say that there's no benefit of having some control. Because number one, control creates structure. Control creates some kind of uniformity. And at least for younger minds like children, it is important for development. It maximizes the meeting of expectations, it minimizes our disappointments, and it provides a sense of predictability, some kind of emotional security. And you can see how that can be healthy for younger minds. But it doesn't mean that we gotta stay that way all the time. Because if we stay that then, and do not learn to grow out of that, then it is very easy to mistake the kind of dependency for trust. But what we learned today from the story, from what God did, is that trust is the exact opposite of having predictability all the time, because trust and loyalty takes the courage to believe in the goodness of the other, to hold on to what is true about the other person, despite the risk of being disappointed. And this is the kind of love that never fails. So here I'm gonna bring to the close. I can say that at least over the years, the time that I've been here, I do observe that every now and then, we try to implement some kind of structure and control, and we do it very spottily. I wouldn't call that a true success story as far as the implementation goes, but that's the thing. Despite all this iffy structure and implementation that we have, I see true friendships are forming. The true friendships have been formed. And that happens to not just people who are official members, but people who have come visit, people who basically, any affiliation. true friendships are forming and true friendships have been formed. So just because, sort of big a reminder for us, just because that in the past few weeks and maybe in the coming future weeks that we choose to discuss mutual relationships and we are comparing, what is transactional or what is relational, do not think that that just automatically means that we are lacking. It's not that. The difference is whether we are seeking to grow from our foundation that we have or we just, finding fault. And I don't think that's where we want to go. All these years together, I have to say, it's not for nothing. All these, big moments, small moments we have, happy moments, sad moments that we have, it's not for nothing. So as we proceed to talk about these for the coming weeks, the first thing to do, I would say, is to remember, to recognize, and to appreciate all those moments that we share in one another's life. If God can choose to trust us before we had anything to show and before we had anything to prove, then the argument goes that we actually have way, way more reasons to trust and to believe and to stay loyal to one another. If we can do this today, then we are already more than halfway there on the path of having mutual and healthy relationships. And now I'd like to transition to communion. We don't need that. So, let's get our hearts ready for communion. And since today's lesson is spoken to the children of Noah, I would be remiss to leave out the other half of the commandments, because I only said half of it. We already talked about the commandment of not shedding innocent blood of another human being, and if we want to go that route, we can certainly have a lot to say about that regarding what happened to Jesus on the cross. But what about the other half of the commandment? What did it say? It says, well, actually before that, we don't get a sense that people ate animal. But after the flood, God said, if you want to have animal for food, yes, you can kill the animal for food. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. So do not eat blood. And then this is repeated again in the New Testament in Acts chapter 15, when the disciples in Jerusalem were deciding what kind of commandments were appropriate for the Gentile Christians, meaning children of Noah. Again, they said, well, number one, no circumcision, but number two, abstain from what is given as sacrifice to the idols and from the blood and from what is strangled. So again, do not eat blood. Which begs the question, when Jesus, what did Jesus mean when he took the cup and he said, drink from it. This is my blood of the covenant. This is my blood. Drink it. No thank you, right? Well, thankfully, it was not his human blood. It was wine, right? He was speaking metaphorically. But still, metaphorically speaking, what does it mean? The answer is already given in the commandment. The life of the flesh is in its blood, because blood is life. And the metaphor further borrowed from Leviticus chapter 17, where it says, for the life of the flesh is in its blood, and I have given it to you for making atonement for your lives on the altar. To make atonement for your lives. The word atonement, kafar, literally means to cover over, to make a coating over it. For it is the blood as life that makes kafar. So, to make atonement is with the blood is to cover by the life power, life force of the blood, so that the person being atoned, being covered by the life force, can live in the presence of God. In Exodus 24, after the people receive all the commandments, the Israelites received all the commandments from Mount Sinai, Moses took the blood of the ram and he sprinkled it on the people. And he said, "See the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." So, atonement is to be sprinkled, not consumed. Now, it's important to make the distinction. So when Jesus said, "This is my blood of the covenant," it is the same metaphor. It doesn't mean eat blood. It means we are being sprinkled with the blood to cover over us so that his life gives us life. Which is why Jesus meant what he meant when he said in John chapter 10, "I'm the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life, and I have come so that they may have life, and not just life, but life abundant." So may we all, as we take the communion, may we all live our lives to show our appreciation and our understanding of what Jesus really meant. And the way we do that is to truly live out his life in our lives. And now I invite you to pray with me. Blessed be our King in heaven, who does not take pleasure in punishments, but desires that we repent and live. Your faithfulness and your loving kindness is from everlasting to everlasting. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.